Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn English with Erica. Today we're going to be starting our first part in a three-part series talking about banking. So today we're going to talk about banking basics, like what kinds of banks will you find here in the United States? What kinds of accounts can you open? What are the services offered by banks? And some vocabulary related. And then at the very end, I'm going to give you some sentence starters to use when you go into a bank, if you want to open an account or if you have a question and so forth. Okay, so that's part one. Part two and part three, those will be on different days. I'm going to talk about credit cards versus debit cards in the second part, loans, mortgages, and credit scores. Okay, and part three is going to deal strictly with Western Union and sending money to different countries, because I know a lot of immigrant families like to do that when they first arrive, especially to the United States. So the first thing we're going to talk about is banking basics, and we have to talk about first what kinds of banks will you see. So in the United States, you'll typically see banks or credit unions. Okay, banks or credit unions. There is a difference. Okay, so the big difference is that banks are for profit and credit unions are not for profit. So what that means to you is that when you go into a bank, there are shareholders or people who are making money off of the interactions that you do with the bank. Okay, versus a credit union, they serve the members. Okay, the members are just like the customers, but what happens with a credit union is all of the services that the credit union offers, any savings comes back to the members. Okay, so banks versus credit unions, and we'll talk about which is better in a minute. Okay, let's talk about the types of bank accounts that you can open. So your two basic bank accounts are going to be checking and savings. Okay, checking and savings. Now, most of the time, when you open a checking account, this is the account that you'll use to pay your bills out of. You might use that for if you have a job and they want to give you direct deposit, which means you won't receive an actual check. You will electronically receive your money. Okay, most of the time that is deposited into a checking account because you need an account number and you also need a routing number, and those you can find on an actual check, but also you can find it within your account online. The other account that you could open would be a savings account. The benefit of a savings account is that you earn some interest. Interest is kind of extra money that you're given by the bank or the credit union for keeping your money in that bank. Okay, so now if you go to a bank, you're going to be looking for bank branches. Bank branches. So branches are just the different banks that belong to the same big banking company. So some of the big banking companies that you'll see will be like Chase, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan is part of Chase, really. Let's see, Bank of America is another really big bank, right? So these are bigger, more corporate. You might find more ATM machines that are related to the bank as you go across the country. Credit unions, you will go to the actual credit union. Okay, so the credit unions usually are kind of one building. Very few have lots of branches, but banks are going to have different branches. Credit unions, there's one, maybe two. Those are more local. Okay, so if you are a police officer or firefighter or a government official or a teacher, all of those occupations or professions tend to have their own credit unions. Those are more community-based, more of a personal feel. And the difference between them, I said we'd talk about that. The banks, more people can belong. Anybody can go to a bank. But the mortgage rates, the savings account rates, those are all going to be different. Credit union, They are usually better to go to for loans or for opening a savings account because you're going to get a higher percentage back for a savings account. And hopefully, if you're maybe going to buy a car and you want a loan through them, hopefully the rate will be a little bit lower. Okay, so for me, I belong to 2 different credit unions. I prefer the credit union over the bank, but I do have some credit cards that I know are sourced through banks, and my home mortgage is sourced through a bank. So there's different positives and negatives to both. Okay, so banks and credit unions are both very useful, but for my day-to-day, I do prefer credit unions. Okay, so some vocabulary that you might see, let's go through that. So we have a checking account, we have a savings account, we have a branch where you go to do your business, the physical building, or if it's a credit union, it'll just be a credit union. You also should know what an ATM is. It's an automated teller machine. So a teller is the person that you go to and talk to and do your business with, but an ATM is automated. It's an automatic teller machine. Those are the machines, freestanding, that you might see in a grocery store, in a bank. You usually have to have a card and a PIN number to use those. You can deposit, put money in, and withdraw, take money out from the ATMs and also from the people, the bank tellers, if you go to a regular bank or credit union. You will also receive either in the mail or online a statement. A statement is a list of what you have, what transactions, what you've done with your account for each month, right? So if you have put money in, deposited, that will show up on one column. If you have taken money out or withdrawn, that will show up in a different column. So it's good to know how to read your bank statements. That will tell you your balance, how much is in your account, okay? Okay, so on your statement, you also might have some of these other words. Okay, so you'll have your deposits, your withdrawals. You can also have transfers made. Okay, so your balance is how much you have in your account. If you have a checking and a savings, you might have 2 separate balances, and you might want to transfer the money from one account to another. So you can transfer money. You can do that online usually. You can also do it in person. So the other couple of words that you should probably know dealing with your bank would be overdraft protection and fees. Okay, fees are things that you have to pay when either you do something wrong with your bank account or when when you need something like a cashier's check or a money order, there might be a fee. Okay, you want to try not to get an overdraft fee. An overdraft fee is when you try to spend more money than you have in your account. Okay, now there's a couple of ways to avoid this. When you go to a bank or a credit union, you can ask for some sort of overdraft protection. So one way of doing this is if you have a checking account, you can have the bank set up for you overdraft protection by having them take money from savings and transfer that money to checking if you spend too much money, if you overdraft. Okay, that's one way. Another way is asking for a line of credit. A line of credit is a service offered by a bank. It can be just $200, $500, $1,000. It's usually not that big of an amount, but it's kind of like a credit on hold, right? So you're not using that money, but you apply for a line of credit to have that attached to your account so that if you ever spend more money accidentally, you're not charged an overdraft fee. Okay, so if you have this line of credit protection, that means if I swipe my debit card or my credit card related to the bank and it's more money than I have in my account, then they won't charge me a fee. They will automatically go to that line of credit. Okay, so that's a good thing to ask for when you're opening an account. Let's talk about some sentence starters or phrases that you can use once you go into a bank. So, first of all, you might want to open an account. You'll have to say, "Hi, I'd like to open a checking account," or "I'd like to open a savings account." Okay. You can ask, "Are there any fees associated with this account?" Or something like, "Does your checking account charge fees?" Okay, because some banks do charge fees for checking accounts. Credit unions, not normally. You could ask them to explain to you, what is the difference between your checking and savings accounts, right? So they should give you lots of information, like with a savings account, you earn 3% interest every month. With a checking account, you can open up a line of credit. Okay, you can ask that question. After you've opened your account, you can either fill out a deposit or withdrawal form to put money in or take money out of your account, or you can ask the bank teller. So if you're asking the bank teller, that might sound like, "I'd like to deposit this check," or "I'd like to deposit this money or this cash," or "Could I withdraw $200 from my savings account? Could I withdraw $500 from my checking account?" Okay, maybe you're buying something big. You can also ask them, let's say you get a paycheck, right, and you're depositing that paycheck. Lots of times that money will not be accessible. You won't be able to take that out right away. So you might ask, "How long does it take for my check to clear?" How long does it take for my check to clear? That means, how long do I have to wait until that money is available to me? Some other questions you might have. Do you offer online banking? Do you offer online banking? That's super useful, especially with cell phones. You can do your banking right on your phone. If you need help with that, just ask, "Is there someone available to help me set up online banking?" Anyone at the bank or the credit union can help you step by step set up your account. And it's so worth taking the time to talk to someone so that you understand everything really well. Do not be afraid to ask questions because it's your money, right? When it comes down to it. Let's see, a couple other things that you might want to talk about. Let's say you have a credit or debit card through your bank or credit union and you lose it. You want to be able to say, "I lost my debit card. What should I do?" "I lost my debit card. What should I do?" Because you want to report that as soon as you can, right? So call the bank, "I lost my debit card." They'll ask for your name, etc. Maybe you received a paper statement in the mail, or you're looking online at your online bank statement and there's a charge there or something that you don't understand. You're going to call your bank or call your credit union and say, "Hi, I'm looking at my bank statement and I have a question. I see this money was taken out on this date. Could you explain to me what that was for?" Okay. As soon as you give either your member number, if it's a credit union, or your bank account number, if it's a bank, or your name, the person who is on the phone with you or the bank teller in front of you should be able to help you. They should be able to look at your account and know exactly what you're talking about. So don't be afraid to ask questions, okay? So I hope that was helpful. Like I said, the next part is going to deal with debit cards versus credit cards. Also loans, like if you want to buy a house or a car, etc. And your credit score, what that is, what that means, okay? And then the very last one, the last part that I'm going to do talks about Western Union and how to send money to different countries, Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in part 2 to learn some more. Bye-bye.